Hey, everybody. Joe Moriarty, CEO, Raven 360. Thanks for coming to the Training Led Growth podcast. Had an awesome conversation today with Christopher Engman, who's the CRO, CMO at Proof Analytics right now, also the author of a book called Megadeals. We talked a lot about marketing, the connection between sales and marketing, the connection between communicating with those groups and driving growth and driving new revenue growth. So it was an awesome conversation. I think you'll take a lot from it if you're interested in trying to figure out where to spend your marketing dollars and what's effective. So let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions. You can comment. And thanks again for listening. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for another special edition of the Training Led Growth podcast. I'm joined today by a really, really interesting, I would say smart guy who's got an incredible amount of experience coming to us all the way from Stockholm, Sweden. Hello, Christopher Engman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Joe. My pleasure.
Yes, thanks again. I mean, Stockholm, I want to talk to you a little bit about Stockholm. What an amazing city that is, and certainly in the news a little bit for what's going on in the world. But let's first introduce kind of what we're going to discuss and you first and foremost. So you've got an incredible background, CEO, multiple CEO and founder, going back to, well, the ones that I can see mostly are Vendemore, and then Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, which I really like that mix. I want to talk to you about what it's like to be a CRO and a CMO. Climion, and then wrote an amazing book, which I want to talk about, Megadeals, and kind of what was we'll get into that. And then all the way up till now, you're the Chief Revenue Officer and Chief Marketing Officer at Proof Analytics.
Right.
So really amazing amount of history and background. So why don't we start? Let's start kind of at the beginning. I'd love to hear, how did you get your start in general in the business world? And then what led you to becoming kind of Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Marketing Officer? And the combination of those two is what I find actually interesting. So take us a little bit from the beginning, and I'd love to hear your history.
I will. I just want to add one thing connected to what you said. So I'm all about depicting what's driving marketing and sales. So ultimately revenue tilted towards more enterprise sales companies. So I've kind of dedicated my life to trying to understand the causes and the effects behind revenue growth, and particularly for companies doing slightly larger deals. So I started my kind of entrepreneurial career when I was in fourth grade. So what are you then, 10 years old? I started my first company. I followed my dad, who he happened to have this kind of card where he got access to the wholesalers for the food industry. So he was in the military, so he had that card that gave him access to one step back in the value chain. And I was kind of just following him, walking behind him, being 10 years old. And then I'm passing the huge candy boxes. I mean, in the store, they're broken up into smaller units, but in this wholesale area, they're huge. I was looking at these boxes and I was making the calculation. What's the price per candy? I was like, Dad, can I get a few months of allowances in advance? He's like, what are you going to do? Yeah, I just want to buy a few of these boxes. He's like, no, you're not going to eat that candy. I'm like, no, I'm not going to eat it. I'm going to sell it.
Yeah, I'm going to make some money.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it. So he's like, okay. So he was actually, he's not at all an entrepreneur at all. He's been his whole life in the public sector. Anyway, he said, fine, you get a few months of allowance. So I bought this. I went out with these huge boxes of candy, and we had this boat where you can sleep in, etc. So we spent several weeks out in the archipelago, and on these islands there are no shops, right?
Yeah.
So I was using supply and demand in a good way, and in every harbor we went to, there were no shops. It was this out in the wild, but there were like 20, 30 boats there with families mostly. So I was like letting everyone know that I had a candy shop in the boat.
That's awesome. And the kids would come. The kids would come flocking to your boat to buy.
Oh yeah. And some of my closer friends, they were like, "Oh, you're Ebenezer Scrooge, or you. We know what you're paying for this, and you're screwing us over." I'm like, "No, I'm not. You don't have to buy it." They're like, "Yeah, but we there's no one else selling it." So
that's simple supply and demand right there.
Some business ideas don't have to be complicated.
No.
But then I did university, and I continued with this sports business. But it was on the side. But it was at least, we didn't make a lot of money on it, but it was enough so that, when most kids, especially in high school, me and my friend, we had tailor-made suits, pretty fancy. Yeah. So we were standing there in the bar looking like adults with fancy clothes, and so we could afford at least a kind of different lifestyle for a teenager. But it wasn't a big business at all. It was local, just in between school and several sport teams, we just did it for fun. But at some point,
that's funny though, because there's a famous saying in the U.S. It's like, you want to dress for the job you want, not for the job you have.
Yeah.
So exactly. you were playing the part. You were like, I'm gonna make this thing big.
Yeah, exactly. But it was good, because once I had after university, I did 1 year of kind of normal employment, and I was so drilled and trained at making my own way and selling my way to things. So I kind of quickly, I remember my first job, and this is 20 years ago, I was making $80,000 per year in my first job straight out of school.
Pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but then I left employment and started my first company. My first grown-up company.
Is that Retain 24?
Exactly. So we were way too early doing digital coupons and gift certificates in the phone. Using, we were in the press in Japan, US, etc. We did, now it's common sense to have barcodes in your phone, right?
Yep.
We did that super early, like 2001. That's 19 years ago. But at that point, the phones were just about to be capable of handling barcodes. So we also had a patent on getting we used the IMEI code, which is unique for each phone all around the world.
Yeah.
And we use that as a proxy to translate into a loyalty card. So instead of having your loyalty card, you use the IMEI number as a proxy. So you kind of, and through Bluetooth and infrared, which was, I'm sure you remember that. Yeah. IR was the most common radio technique. Well, it's not even radio, it's light. But anyway, so we were pointing the phone at a receiver, an infrared receiver, and then we were transmitting gift card details, loyalty card details, and all that. And it was all, but it was way too early, So
right. It's like there weren't that many even smartphones available at that time, right?
No, exactly. No, this were the Nokias and the Ericssons and the Samsung. No, not the Samsung, the Siemens and those kind of phones.
Yeah.
So we were way too early. I was also a pretty bad CEO. I made all the leadership mistakes in the book.
Yep.
Came with too many answers and too few questions. And then I was surprised that the team didn't follow,
Right. Yeah.
Probably a lot of people listening to this have done the same mistakes. And
oh yeah, I have. I definitely have. So that's exactly. One of those ones you got to learn through experience is, listen a lot more than you talk. And that's a good one. That's a good lesson.
Yeah. In the end, you get better results because you use more brains. And the second thing is you don't have to work on anchoring decisions because they're already created by the team. So the leadership becomes easier. But anyway, you have to kind of bleed a bit to learn that. But anyway, so the first time that company went bankrupt, but luckily we could restart it, and then we were more focused, and also I left as CEO. I was actually pretty mature. The head of sales took over as a CEO, and it became a pretty good company. It was sold to a pretty successful private equity company just the other year.
Great.
And
that's a great win. I mean, if you take a company for anytime you take a company from founding all the way through to even a private equity exit, that's amazing.
Yeah. Now I wasn't.
It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder than people think too.
Unfortunately, I had sold my shares prior to the exit because I really needed it for building a taxi system, which was my subsequent venture, where we built. We were the first company in the world doing. So I've actually been creating 3 category leaders. So first in the digital gift certificate and coupon space. First in the using smartphones for the taxi fleet.
Mm-hmm.
And that we kind of replaced old tech in the taxi space, both in the cars but also in the the call centers.
Yeah,
all very modern technologies, all SaaS, which was, I mean, at that point in time it was kind of when Salesforce was also SaaS. It was very early, but that was luckily successful all the way from the start. So we just grew in the Nordics and in the Netherlands and the UK, yeah.
Let me ask you a question just on that, because the taxi industry has typically been very slow to change, very insulated. So how was that? How was it breaking in and introducing technology?
It was actually not so difficult. I would say, I think it's been infrastructure blocking it, because the taxi drivers are very tech oriented. They're very tech friendly. They love any new tech that comes out. If you look at taxi drivers, they'll have the fanciest Bose headset. They'll have
that's true.
They love gadgets. So one of the way we sold was to actually show off with some cool tech. That was actually one of the way we could win, especially, I mean, these taxi companies are typically owned by a multitude of fleet owners that go together and create a switchboard, basically.
Well, that's smart. I mean, that's smart from a psychological, how you're selling and getting some groundswells. That's a good approach.
Yeah. But then, so we were 3 founders, and we, not to point anyone out, but let's say one of us wanted to sell software, and the others wanted to sell a service similar to Uber. So we were several years before Uber, and we wanted to sell that, but we were not united. And then subsequently, I left because I was like, I want to build a service where we connect taxi companies, where you can book from wherever you are. You kind of landing in an airport, just book. So basically what Uber is.
Yeah.
But we were not united, and there's a veto among large shareholders. So that big of a decision was ruled out, unfortunately. I mean, but in the end, that company was also sold to a pretty successful private equity company, KKR.
Oh yeah, a big one. That's a big private equity company.
Yes, so it was sold to them, and they merged it with the biggest taxi company in Europe, actually. So what they're building now, if I try to read between the lines, they're kind of doing an attack against Uber and those kind of companies, but with coming from the other end.
So after that, so from that business, then got into Vendamore, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a very simple trigger. So selling to taxi companies, since most of them are organized as a co-op between fleet owners that own anything from 1 car to 100 cars, you have a large audience to sell to. So pretty often we had sales meetings. So the first sales meetings were with let's say you and a handful of people. But then once we came to a point where it should be a real decision, we often rented a school or something where they could seat 500 people. Mm-hmm. So I've been selling to 500 people where there's a hand race. So are we going to go with Christopher and these guys who's for and who's against,
Right.
So, and that kind of selling is a bit like the political arena. It's like Obama and those guys. So, and then so I did spend 1 year in the second largest fashion retailer in the Nordics after H&M as a CIO, not my profile or anything, but they were acquiring a lot of companies. And I did have this business IT background. So I was kind of taking a break from entrepreneurship, being the CIO there for a while. And I noticed that sitting in a bigger company, how vendors were treating us, and actually, in many ways, how bad they were. I mean, there were exceptions. There's one guy called Christer. He's amazing. He's in our Megadeals book, by the way. But some of the vendors, they just came in and talked about me, us. Nothing about the retail industry. They could even ask, so Christopher, could you tell me what's going on in the retail space? I'm like, no, you have to figure that out.
Yeah.
I can't educate you. Come on. So anyway, and also one big realization, which was similar to the taxi experience, was that in larger corporations around the larger decisions, there's a pretty hefty consensus war. Like there's internal politics and the forces that are pulling in different directions. So if you can't win the internal politics, you will probably never land a mega deal. So that experience, when I was sitting on the buyer side, I realized, wow, the audience around these larger deals is immense. It's way bigger than any salespeople would ever imagine. So when leaving when leaving that company and having had the taxi system experience, I was like, I need to figure out a way to drive consensus. Like, how can we do something probably in the marketing space that is driving consensus at scale? So that led to the creation of Vendemore. That in the beginning we used actually emails and letters, like classic hand-signed letters with very personalized content. But we quickly started to run tests on using IP ranges. So we researched the target accounts on behalf of a client.
And let me ask you a question, Christopher. Who was Vendemore's customers? So who's using?
So enterprise. So in the beginning, it was mid-sized enterprise selling software companies with a Stockholm headquarter. But after a few years, we worked with over 100 Fortune 500 companies, and more than half of them were US headquartered. But in the beginning, it was all about how can we create a marketing mechanism that is driving consensus at scale, because that is nothing that salespeople can do. They just can't do it.
And consensus is another word for that, just awareness and education.
Yeah, awareness, anchoring, and bigger. So winning votes, basically. So to get the big decision through, you need to have the majority behind the decision. And typically a pretty advanced majority, so way more than 50%. You need to have a broad consensus, a broad vote. Much bigger than in a presidential election. You need to have I don't know what it's called in English, but a qualified majority in favor of your decision. So to enable that, you need to do like they do in the presidential election. You need to run marketing towards the masses, and in this case, the masses that works inside an account.
Right.
To win top level, mid-level, low level, and various functional areas. So what we did 2 years prior to anyone else, we started to play around with. So basically, we used IP numbers, IP ranges, first to identify who's visiting your profile. So when we did these emails and letters, we used the IP range to see out of these 500 people we've sent to that sits in 67 companies, which of them are showing traffic on our website or on our client's website. So that's how we use the IP numbers in the beginning. And then we use the IP number too.
So let me ask one question there. So you knew you had sent outbound, basically direct mail to X company, and then you'd monitor the web traffics from that IP address hitting your IP address to see what was the result of that.
Yeah.
Basically physical campaign. That's interesting. Okay. That's cool. That was early. Yeah.
And this was 2007. And we then started to use the IP numbers to change the content on the website. So if you came from British Petroleum, we immediately faced you with a British Petroleum tailored content straight on the start page.
Like a landing page that was tailored.
Like a landing page that was pasted on top of the. So it was completely tailored into the website. So you couldn't see that it was a landing surface.
Right.
It was. Yeah. We then contacted the largest media group in the Nordics, and we asked them, so because we've heard from others that they use IP numbers to target themselves like a test campaign. So prior to launching a banner ad, they test launch it towards their own staff to see that it works properly.
Yep.
So they pasted their own IP ranges into their ad systems. So we had heard that through a few contacts. So I basically reached out to them and asked for a meeting, and then I said, so can your system, can you book campaigns towards IP numbers? They're like, no. And they're like, and then I said, but don't you target yourself in a test campaign each time? They're like, yeah, we do. But then you should be able to do that outbound, outside your own organization. They're like, yeah, great idea.
Right.
They haven't thought about it. And then they checked, and it was like, we can only handle 256 IP numbers, which is in the hexagonal.
Right.
So I was like, that sounds like a constraint in a database that the developer just put there because they have to put some kind of constraint. So I said, so who's your contact in the tech company that provides you with the ad platform? And it was a German company. So I called them and I said, so we're trying to book a campaign towards a larger volume of IP numbers, but you seem to have a setting in your database which says 256 letters or sign, characters. And they said, yeah. I said, can you alter that into a few 100,000 IP numbers? They're like, yeah, no problem. They just changed it and updated the software. A few hours later, we could run it.
Wow.
I was expecting like bureaucracy to the moon.
Wow. You found the right person to do that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I think there's a little bit of luck there, because I think a lot of people would be like, no, we can't do that. But you found somebody who says, yeah, sure, we can do that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And the day after it was done. So we started to email the text files with IP ranges in them. And then these are the 7 ads. Can you please book it towards these IP numbers? And then they were like, yeah, but that's a very small target group. And we're like, we're prepared to pay 5 times more whatever you get from anyone else. They're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's easy. So how did you know the IP addresses? Did you do some research?
So we researched online. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then we made that into a professional product with a self-service user interface and statistics and all that kind of stuff. And we were pretty early with this. So we were the first Gartner cool vendor in the ABM space.
Yeah.
I mean, the targeted advertising is just one piece of a bigger ABM puzzle, but it's probably maybe the most important piece.
Because you guys were way ahead of impressions, right? You were basically way ahead of it in branding and impressions. And now we know, right, it takes X amount of impressions and eyeballs before someone starts to recognize that a certain brand or provider. So you guys were ahead of that.
So the early day pitch was pretty simple. We said, Joe, what are your top 17 prospects? You're like, yeah, these companies, we're talking to half of them. We're trying to get into the other half. I'm like, okay, what if I can take all known mass media and show your videos and ads only to those 17? People like you were like, are you joking? Yeah, I'm interested. How do you do that? And what does it cost? I was like, and we charged in the beginning, we charged like 4 times what is now being charged, because people were like, wow, I didn't even know you could do that. And so we came with something completely novel. But then we reduced the price into more, what is more what it is now. I mean,
do you think that people are even doing this effectively today?
Oh no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, I know account-based marketing. I mean, actually, we should explain that for those. Account-based marketing is essentially targeted at the biggest accounts that you want to get into, and so how do you get them to know who you are, that you solve a pain point that they might have. But I think account-based marketing,
both new logos and ongoing sales process and existing clients. So where you basically have the biggest money on the table,
right?
And then you run advertising and other kind of marketing towards those 17, for example. So yeah, some people say that the definition is when you see one account as a market where you can grow. And most successful account-based marketing is actually not used to lead generate. It's mostly used to accelerate and increase the win rate of an existing sales dialogue and also existing clients where you want to do upselling, cross-selling.
That's a good differentiation, and that it's to grow expanding accounts or accounts that are already aware of you, but to grow that probability that you can win or grow the account once it's already closed won into new business.
Right.
Yeah,
right. In when we run Megadeals advisory, we're blending not just that piece of the ABM puzzle, but other things as well. Even outdoor marketing around the head office of the client, we're using a variety of ad techniques and content, and run it as a retainer and a success fee basis. As a kind of, sometimes we call it, we're the Obama campaign team.
But physical, you're saying, signage.
Oh yeah, both like Clear Channel, JCTCO, and those. So both digital ABM, but also analog, like physical, outside their offices.
Yeah, so, and I mean that physical. It's made a huge comeback, right? Like just signage, billboards, bus stops. I mean, that stuff is actually because of the impressions, right? It's because it's like you're driving, you're walking, you're waiting for public transport. You're like, I just saw those guys on my Twitter feed. Then I got an impression through Instagram, and then now I'm sitting waiting, and there they are. Yeah, that's the puzzle, right? Is all those pieces and. Yeah.
And if you're blending a mix of ABM tactics on an ongoing sales process with a synchronized sales message with the salespeople, and then you do the same in social media and PR, and you're kind of encapsulating the client with your messaging, and you're going back to the consensus creation. You're winning votes internally, but you're also getting people to vote in favor of your view of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me pull on one string there. The sales team, right? How do you keep the sales team synchronized with the message? How do you make sure that the value prop, the message, the pain point that you're solving, how do you keep them all? How do you keep everybody in sync? Because that to me is the connection between CRO and CMO.
Yeah. There are two key activities that you do. First of all, you're creating content where you're basically sourcing the messaging and the content from the salespeople. Because if you're responsible worldwide for the BP account, obviously you know more about the BP account than the marketing team does.
You should.
For us to really influence the BP account, we need to source the main bullets from you. Not from marketing's own ideas, which is classic mistake.
Right.
Secondly, when it comes to running the execution of the ABM, it's done with you. So let's say you and your team, you're running BP worldwide. So marketing is sitting down with you going, okay, now based on the discussion with you last week, we created these 18 different ads. We've now drafted the article that we made based on your interview and all that kind of stuff. And this is the suggestion. And then you alter it between you and your team and the marketing people. And then what you do ongoing is that you have meetings every second week where you make changes. So you change in the ad, you make changes in the ads, you switch messaging depending on phase of what are the big discussions internal right now in the BP account. Well, they have objections around these three things, and we know we compete with these two other vendors. So you can take from your battle cards certain content and launch it in media. So you're really amplifying the work that someone skillful like you is doing in the meetings with 3 people. You're amplifying it to 100,000 people and having that synchronized. So where many people are making mistakes around marketing in general, especially in the B2B space, and in particular ABM, is that they run it disconnected from sales. And the complete, I mean, the obvious thing to do is to both source messaging ideas and big topics from the sales leaders, but also have the execution synchronized with the sales leaders. But there's actually a third component that I forgot about. So what you also do, most salespeople, especially the ones running the big accounts, they have big egos. I think you can subscribe to that. Yeah. They have huge egos, which is great. I mean, that's what's driving them. But what you do, let's say you're the account leader of BP and you have 3 people helping you. So in the articles, the videos, and the ads, who do we put? You, obviously. So we make you a celebrity within the BP account. So whenever there's a thought leadership piece coming out, it's your thought leadership piece. When there's a video, is you or your team members in it, so that when you're meeting your clients, they go, oh, Joe, you have time to be here? You're so important. I mean, wow, I've seen your company, and they're really using you as the poster boy. Yep. And first of all, it actually makes you more interested in the marketing because it's about you, right? So the ego is playing the favor of marketing because you all of a sudden are very helpful, okay? But that's secondly, smart. Very clever. Secondly, marketing is making you a celebrity within your high priority account. So all of a sudden, when you're trying to increase your network internally, they're like, yeah, Joe, he's, I mean, wow, I see him everywhere. And I've even experienced many, many times where I go into a sales meeting and I can see that they're starstruck.
Right.
They've seen me in so many videos and ads that they're starstruck.
Right.
Yeah, I can just sense it. And it totally plays to my favor because all of a sudden, I'm not this begging salesperson. I'm on their level or maybe even a bit above. In perception, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach. And there's always been a friction between marketing and sales, kind of a natural friction. I've been in B2B enterprise technology sales my whole, for, 25 years too. And the thing that, there was always this perception that sales was the ego driven, deal driven, like, oh, we're going to, big sales kickoffs, and then marketing would, the sales guys would say, well, look, marketing's off there like playing with crayons in the corner, trying to create, artwork.
Branded balloons.
It's like, so there was always that natural friction. And I've always thought that sales and marketing have to be more aligned. And that's the key, I think, is everything you just said, is that you got to get the messaging, the pain points, the true account information from sales, but then get them to work with marketing. So that's a really clever approach. I think that, and by the way, probably super effective on the account side too.
It is. Yeah. We apply this. So once we were done with Megadeals research, the book wasn't ready, but the research was done. I got the chance to both invest and run sales and marketing, CRO, CMO at Climbon, which is selling power plants. And I got a yes from the CEO to apply the research fully. The product is amazing, the timing is great and all of that, but marketing and sales did contribute to the $3 to $90 million order intake growth in just 2 years. And we also got Bill Gates and Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, Jack Ma, a few others as on the investor side.
Wow.
With a pretty successful NASDAQ listing as well.
Wow. So you applied the same ABM approach, consensus building approach, not only to potential customers, but even investors too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so I've even been assisting companies that are doing an exit, been applying ABM to boost their exit to the 3 biggest potential buyers of that company.
Wow. Very smart.
You can kind of hype the case through marketing.
Yeah.
Even investors, they're normal people. They also become starstruck. So if they see Joe everywhere on the internet and in videos and podcasts and all that, they will be affected by it.
That's right. Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Wow. I'm learning a ton. So talk to me about Megadeals in general. So did you write this book to specifically talk through this approach and all the stuff that you learned in the past in these?
Yeah. We had that as the basis, but then we engaged in both desktop research, but also deep interviews with over 60 serial mega dealers. And mega deals we've identified as $10 million up to $15 billion. That was the range we look at.
So the minimum for a mega deal is 10 million.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, so a lot of companies that use the discipline are doing deals that are in the range of $500,000, $1 million. So, but our research was based on that range. So
good.
So yeah, and because and to your point earlier, yes, we made the findings among the serial mega dealers because they're the Gretzkys of the business world.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think I'm a mega dealer yet. I need to be doing more. I need to be doing 10 million plus deals.
Yeah, exactly. So we use them as the research bench, if you like. But the insights can be applied also on medium-sized B2B deals. They don't have to be in the billion-dollar range. But it's pretty interesting when you study. So let's say you and I, you're probably better at tennis than I am. But let's say we want to study tennis. We're probably not studying you and me because we're shit, right?
Sure.
I mean, compared to the real guys and Serena Williams and I mean,
Roger Federer. Yeah.
Roger Federer. Exactly. We just can't compete. So obviously, if you want to study tennis, you're studying the best. It's the same in business.
That makes sense. Yep.
So we in the B2B space, there are, this is interesting. So even in the biggest companies in the world, do you know how many rainmakers they have? Let's say they have 5,000 people in the commercial marketing sales. How many of those are the rainmakers?
I'd guess 2, maybe 1.
2 to 4.
2 to 4, yeah.
2 to 4. So we're talking about this elite group. It's the same as in sport. I mean, what's the guy who's kind of the quarterback best for like ages in the U.S.?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, exactly.
Patriots.
Tom Brady. So it's the same in the B2B space.
Now.
You have the Tom Bradys, and they're just tremendously good, and they make the difference. It's like the Michael Jordans. You do have them, and so we decided to study them, and that's where we found most of the components in the discipline. So we only used my history as the hypothesis. So we threw that on the table and said, this is what we've seen in over 100 Fortune 500 cases doing ABM. So we now want to look at what do you do to crack these biggest deals, and what do you think about our hypothesis? And in the beginning, we got a ton of feedback. So it was like a lot of feedback, and we decided to make changes all the time, like iterative development, agile development. So we changed the hypothesis after each interview. So the feedback got less and less, and after 30 interviews, it was more like beep. We kind of, so, and then typically, so in the last 30 interviews, almost everyone said, I mean, there were small changes, but most people said, wow, you put words on things I've felt my entire life, but I couldn't describe it to others. And secondly, you're describing a few things that I'm not doing yet, that I should be doing. So those 2 sentences I've heard so many times. So that was kind of a signal that we're now, there is no truth in Megadeals. It's so complex. You can't say we figured it out. We have not, but we're probably the least error, right? Yeah. The least delta between the truth and fiction or theory.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we talk about in the book, what we talk about in on stage in conferences, running workshops. But the most fascinating thing we do is something we call deal orchestration, where we operate as a corporate finance team. Mm-hmm. So we come in and we deliver this work on 3 to 5 deals. So we say, okay, Joe, what are your 3 to 5 most important deals this year? And you're like, yeah, it's this. I want to grow the Mars account. I want to grow the Bank of America account. I want to win these 3 logos, and it's in the making. Okay, cool. We come in and we run the full discipline, all of the things, the sales coaching, the marketing machinery, and we run it on a retainer and a success fee basis. That's the most fun thing I do.
And that's the Megadeals advisory.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's incredible. I see the value. I mean, I get it. Let me ask you a tactical question just about marketing in general. Maybe this leads up to your current CRO, CMO at Proof Analytics. And because I think a lot of what you guys try to solve or talk about is like, what is the benefit or what is the return I'm getting from my marketing spend, but then also what should I be spending my marketing on? The best things. And so for companies that are trying to figure that out, or at a very like simplified level, do you guys have metrics about let's say your B2B SaaS or B2B enterprise software, like what percentage of revenue or revenue growth should you be allocating to ABM or marketing in general? Can you even go that high? Have you done the research to say
some pointers
in this market?
Yeah. So first of all, Prove is about using the analytics methods that is used by the biggest brands in the world and is seen as the only thing that comes close to the truth. So it's based on marketing mix modeling or econometrics applied on marketing and sales.
Right. Which has, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, traditionally very, very hard, right? I mean, I've worked with marketing agencies my whole career, and trying to get someone to tie what is the true ROI from a marketing spend has been so hard to get anyone to give you a concrete answer, because I think it's hard. Number one, it's difficult to get it all, and then there's also some hesitancy in general, because I think marketing always wants to, be showing great result, showing great stuff, but it's been hard. I mean, just getting that, be like, what are like, I know I spent X. What was the result? It's
right. The issue when you use things like Google Analytics and those kind of very simple tools is that you typically focused on what's called the last click attribution. So you had 47 touch points with my brand or my specific product on social media, outdoor, in newspaper, through recommendations, YouTube, and then you make a search and you click on a search ad and you buy the product. Typically in a last click attribution, you attribute all the value to the last click, which is what Google Analytics is doing.
You could have the physical signage on the bus stop. So when the person walked out of work, that was the 15th thing they saw. And they said, you know what, I got to go, I need to research that. And then they buy. You can't, how can you attribute that? Right.
Yeah.
That's the challenge, I guess.
And then the extension of the last click attribution was where you go. Let's say we try to track digitally what people are doing. The problem though is that you see such a small part of the full picture. It is a bit like looking at the world through a straw. You can't see PR, you can't see branding, thought leadership. You can't see anything on social channels, and not anything until they click, which they rarely do, right? So that world becomes very skewed and very biased to immediate results. So anything that has an immediate effect is coming out as a winner in the click-based attribution world. Anything with a delayed effect is looks like losers. So what marketing mix modeling is doing is trying to, let's say this is your sales curve. I'm simplifying this enormously now. So you have the sales curve here, it's going up and down. Hopefully the trend is up. And then you have the underlying factors, which is how much I spend on retargeting, on webinars, how much I spend on ABM, LinkedIn posts, blah, 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 video, whatever, combined with some of the numerical metrics like site traffic and things like that. So what you're trying to do is, if this is the sales curve, you're trying to make this sounds weird if you're not into the space, and we have too little time to go deep into it, but you're mathematically trying to recreate the sales curve by using these underlying factors. And when you reach the good enough result is when your virtual line is close to the real sales line. Then you have managed to reproduce the effect based on the causes, including the individual time lags you have on like PR is very spread out effect, whereas search ads very immediate effect, an email shot very immediate effect, things like that. So the mathematics is managing to create basically a y equals 3 times x, blah, 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 blah. So it becomes a mathematical formula. And this sounds very obscure, but it's way closer to the truth than any other method.
Well, I don't know that it's that. I wouldn't say obscure. I think you're trying to apply, true inputs, true mathematics to what is the result. How do we get to? Because look, we all try to figure this out. We all try to say, look, we know we have X amount of budget to spend. in specific marketing activities, digital, ABM, outbound, inbound, blog,
Right.
going to trade shows, everything, all that stuff you try to figure out. And then when you're tasked with saying, what was the best result? Where are we getting the most return and most sales? It's like, I mean, so I appreciate that you can put a mathematical approach to it. I've never been able to do it in a certainly a concrete way. I think because part of it again is what you said earlier, which is we have digital spend, we have Google Ad, Google, all these other things. Maybe we're doing physical media, right? Billboards and signage and stuff like that. But then ultimately you're trying to drive people to your public website. You're trying to drive people to landing pages, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you one question, Christopher, because so one approach we've seen be very effective, and this is a little bit self-serving, but what we do is we stand up academies, which basically we stand up these learning experiences for people to learn about products, to learn about how to, and I'm talking about technical learning, like how do I use this product to do X? And what we've found, and that's usually done post-sales.
Right.
That's usually delivered after somebody makes the decision to buy the product. But what we have found is when we take an academy and we put it up front, just linked to the public website, you let someone start to learn about the product at their own pace. That's been super effective because they're saying, oh, someone's giving me actually valuable content about what button to push, what right line of code to write, and there's been some psychological effect because I think people go to academies because they know they can learn something or gain some knowledge. So that's been an interesting trend that I've seen over the last year when you can expose more technical, deeper knowledge up front as a way to, get people down the buying process.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some things that you sell, they're just complicated. So you need to educate your audience. So I totally agree with you. I mean, we have probably not done this the way you would do it, but if you go to YouTube, you search for Proof Analytics and find our YouTube channel. There's 7 videos, and again, they're not on what you would produce, but we have 7 short videos that are explaining the various concepts of marketing mix modeling.
Yep.
It happens to be me behind the glass screen. So I'm, with a pen explaining the basic mathematics, but in popular science way. So it's not at all mathematical. It's very popular science. But I'm explaining the concepts behind market mix modeling because, to your point, we know that if our customers don't understand the methods, at least conceptually, they're not buying.
Right.
Or
your competitor may explain it or provide that content, and then that prospect becomes more engaged with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I totally agree with you. Both educational content, but probably even real educational programs where you can do an exam and you get your certificate. I think a lot of companies will provide that for free. I'm sure a few companies do already. We just do it in a more unsophisticated way still. We just hand out these educational videos. There's not a real program around this, so you can just watch it in your sofa at home. But
I do think it works really well for complex products. I mean, we're all agile engineering now, so it's like you push code frequently. But we've seen a company, UiPath. They're a robotic process automation, which is building software bots to automate back end work, for manual tasks. And their CEO was really ahead of this, Daniel Dines, and he basically said, "Look, we're going to educate the world on RPA. We're going to give it away, but we're going to get people certified." And that was a really strategic approach in addition to marketing, right? So I wouldn't say they're doing the stuff that you're doing. I mean, I've learned a ton from talking to you just around what more we could be doing, but adding the education upfront, early, free, certified, I mean, that's strategic because then people get really loyal. You're building brand loyalty by getting people really educated.
Yeah. No, 100%. So there's one thing I want to share with you. You asked it before, and I didn't reply. I went into another path. So you said, what are the findings you can see so far? Like, what should you do, not, etc. So it's very tricky to say that this is kind of the overall rules, but I can say this much. We're seeing a few things again and again. Now, the sample isn't several thousand clients, so we cannot say this is the truth, but we see tendencies. Okay, so one tendency is the company in the B2B space, in particular, companies are overspending on lead generation. They're underspending on the ongoing pipeline and the existing clients. That's a very clear pattern. Companies are typically overspending on events. I'm not talking B2B. They're underspending on content distribution as opposed to content creation. There is a huge overspend. I think I mentioned this the last time we spoke, on salespeople as opposed to marketing. So there's an overbelief in feet on the ground. Whereas, Climb is heavy B2B, and we spend more money on marketing than we did on sales. And we grew $3 to $90 million in 2 years. Now, that wasn't, again, many factors, good timing, great product, great leadership, all that kind of stuff. But we're at least contributing, I think, significantly. So PR is becoming underinvested because, to your point earlier, it's hard to quantify using the simple methods like Google Analytics, etc. Just hard to quantify. But when you do marketing smartly, you see the value. And it's typically very spread out. Again, very hard to quantify in a click-based model because there's no immediate click. You're influencing the buyer. One other thing, people think PR is top of the funnel. PR has the highest impact, bottom of the funnel.
No kidding. That's counter. I didn't think that either.
It's influencing the win rate more than anything. So I think it has to do with trust. So when you're close into the buying decision, you want to go with a vendor that you trust, and third-party endorsements, whether it's on recommendation sites from analysts or in the third-party media, it gives you a trust layer that is making it easier for the customer to engage with you. What else? I think companies that have gone down the path of performance marketing, they're typically completely underinvesting into brand and PR. They're just pouring money into Google because the Google tools are giving Google the win. I have nothing against Google in general. I'm just saying that when you look at a last click attribution or even a multi-touch attribution, the performance channels are winning more than they should. So you're underinvesting in thought leadership, brand, and PR.
Wow. So Christopher, that's amazing. Let me see if I can summarize some of those trends, because I think that this is really, really interesting, important stuff. Overspending on lead gen, underspending on growth in existing accounts, overspending events, underspending on content creation, perhaps overspending on sales people, underspending on marketing because of everything you've just said, and I buy that, and then underspending PR. And I thought the way you said it was super interesting. Is that influencing win rate, influencing bottom of funnel? That's incredible stuff. So, Christopher, where can our listeners, the people who find this, where can they find you? How do they? Because I'm telling you what, this is. In fact, I want to go deeper. I think we're running out of time on this session, but I'm going to call on you again because I want to go deeper. I've learned a ton. Just talking to you in this time we had. So how do you find Christopher Engman for advice and connection?
Right. So Megadeals.com is one source where you definitely find me because I'm the founder. You find me on LinkedIn, Christopher Engman. There are a few, but I'm pretty sure I have the biggest follower base, so I probably appear as number one there. I'm on Twitter, Chris Engman on Twitter. I actually don't use Twitter much for some reason. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And then there are, I hope this will be a great podcast. I'm on quite a few podcasts with various angles in it. Google, Megadeals.com and LinkedIn, Christopher Engman.
Christopher Engman, Megadeals.com. Find Christopher Engman on LinkedIn. Great conversation, Christopher. I really appreciate the insight, and I feel like we scratched the surface on some things. So I'd love to have you back and love to talk some more. because I learned a ton, and it was really, really valuable. So thank you so much for your time.
You brought up a few angles on education that we need to talk about that.
Let's do it. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again. Thanks, Christopher.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.